Hi everyone, my name is Richard Santoro and I welcome you to Third and Zen. And today we're going to jump right in and I want to talk to you about filmmaker, director Edgar Wright, one of my absolute favorites. He's got a great filmography. I recommend checking him out if you're not familiar with him. And I want to talk specifically about his Cornetto trilogy, as it's affectionately known as, which consists of Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. Now, here's my journey with this trilogy. When Shaun of the Dead first came out in 2004, I didn't really like it. I wasn't a very big fan of it. And then a few years later, Hot Fuzz came out. And that is one of my most enjoyable viewing experiences ever. I loved it from start to finish. I thought it was brilliant. It's still one of my all-time favorite movies. I could watch it every day over and over again. And when I watched Hot Fuzz, I thought, let me give Shaun of the Dead another try because people seem to really like that movie. And I watched it again and I started to like it. And I've since now learned to love it. I actually really enjoy that movie. So at first I wasn't a fan. Then I saw Hot Fuzz. And then I gave Shaun of the Dead another try. And I liked it. So then a few years after that, in 2013, I love Shaun of the Dead, love Hot Fuzz, and then Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, Edgar Wright, they come out with the third of this Cornetto trilogy, The World's End. I'm thinking, this is going to be fantastic. And I watch it, and I'm like, okay. I mean, the trailer looked so good, looked great, but I watched it, and it just didn't do it for me. And then a couple of years ago, one of my best friends was talking about it, and I said, all right, let me give this movie another shot. And so a couple of years ago, so it's almost 10 years after the movie came out, I watched it and I was like, whoa, I actually like it. I get it. And that's part of the thing I want to talk about. Number one, Edgar Wright's movies, just to talk about that briefly before we get into our spiritual fruit of it all, Edgar Wright's movies exist on a lot of levels. He is telling a really enjoyable, well-edited, well-put-together, well-written, brilliant movie that is brilliantly made. But there's some levels to it, and especially with The World's End I missed, and especially with Shaun of the Dead, I sort of missed that. Hot Fuzz, I got the levels and have since been turned on to even more levels of it. But bottom line, Edgar Wright, Nick Frost, Simon Pegg with this Cornetto trilogy, they're making movies that are intelligent and deep and have some stuff to them, and I was missing it. But then given Shaun of the Dead and The World's End another chance, it took some time. It took another viewing or two, and then I caught on. And I went from disliking them to liking them to loving them and really appreciating them. And that happens, doesn't it? Things take time. Things take a little bit more processing, absorbing, learning, seeing it differently, having things land differently, having things be presented to us a little differently, because we're always a little bit different from the beginning to the end. I was a different person, not drastically, but we're never the same person. And I see Shaun of the Dead, and then I see it again a little later. I'm a little different, a little more. So that happens. Things take time. We need to process. We need to learn. We need to be open. We need to be teachable. We need to be malleable. We need to be patient. We need to be teachable. We need to understand that oftentimes we need to change and grow and learn and come around to things. Think about Nicodemus in the Gospel of John. Gospel of John, speaking of things that exist on so many levels, and when you read it the first time, we're not going to get everything that's there. It takes years upon years of study and unpacking and looking at these layers and all the complexities to it. But we have an individual named Nicodemus who, we see him with Jesus originally, and he's a deeply religious, spiritual, orthodox man, and he's not really getting it with Jesus. He's not opposed, but he's not really on board. He's having a little bit of Shaun of the Dead experience, and he's like, I don't know about that. And then later in the gospel, a little bit more connected, and then finally towards the end, he comes around. Now, to be clear, just as it did with Nicodemus and others and Jesus' siblings, his brothers, it did take the crucifixion and the resurrection. Those are quite a big deal. So in the course of the gospel journey, not everybody's going to be Peter, James, John, Andrew, where it's, follow me, I will make you fishers of people. And they say, okay, follow you, right away. There are people that loved Shaun of the Dead and The World's End right away. But then there's people like Nicodemus who take a little time with Shaun of the Dead, who take a little time with The World's End, who take a little time with Jesus, who take a little time with needing to learn, to process, to absorb, to come around. But things sometimes take time. And sometimes we need to be open, to be turned around on things, to pivot away from things, to be taught. We need to be teachable. We need to be malleable. We need to be open. We need to be able to allow our minds to change on things. We see a lot of this in our spiritual world, and we see a lot of this today in our socio-political world. There's a lot going on where sides are very, 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 very divided, and in my opinion, one is pretty clear cut that, yeah, this is right. This is noble. This is normal. This is healthy. And this is toxic. This is unhealthy. This is not good. So in that socio-political realm and all that comes with it, I would hope that people would eventually have come around by now, but it's clear that people aren't. Setting that aside, it would be nice if people would come around. With that being said, in all things, life, spirituality, wisdom, our daily journey, it is good to be open. It is good to be teachable. It is good to be malleable, to be able to grow, to learn, to change, to pivot. And like I did with Shaun of the Dead and The World's End, to come around and see things a little bit differently and say, okay, I see it now. This is actually a good way, a good path. So it is my prayer that as we go forward, we will be open to change. We will be open to have our minds changed. We will be open to be taught. We will be teachable. Say that another way. We will be open to coming around to things. Thanks be to God. Amen. Okay, my friends, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I wish you nothing but peace, love, fellowship with God and Jesus as you go forward on your journey. And I recommend Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz especially, and The World's End, and all of Edgar Wright's films. Brilliant, brilliant filmmaker. My friends, thanks for being here. Thanks for being you. I love you all. Have a great day. Have a great week. Ciao, ciao.